are listening to Blue Please right here on CynicalBrits.com with myself, Total Biscuit. Yes, you are, you wonderful, wonderful people. Right, continuing. I was being sarcastic, by the way. I hate every last one of you. I, in fact, have an individual list of everybody I hate. It's a rather long list, and you're all on it. Ugh. Disgraceful. Disgraceful. Okay. Let's see what we have. More Q&A, more Q&A. Now, as far as I'm aware, this probably doesn't get any better. I'm sorry, a lot of these questions are kind of silly, but there are some reasonable answers. I'm sort of picking and choosing here, trying to avoid all the ones that are absolutely terrible. Ignoring that. Okay, this is an interesting one. I like this. This actually comes from a Korean. PvP realms are getting indistinguishable from PvE realms as players are not engaging in PvP conflict since they're not finding it attractive. The only difference between the PvE is that it's possible to attack an opponent around zones in conflict. Is there any plan to strengthen the difference between PvP and PvE realms? We don't think it's that world PvP is unattractive, answers Blizzard. We just think that it's the cumulative effect of a lot of these changes we made to the game to meet other goals. For example, flying mounts are really cool and convenient, but they mean you are much less likely to stumble upon someone from the opposing faction while traveling. We consider teleportation a mandatory feature for Dungeon Finder to succeed, but then you are less likely to bump into an enemy outside of a dungeon. To get world PvP back in some form, we'd have to develop something like the Isle of Qualdanas, a non-flight zone that is not a sanctuary, where players congregate to finish quests or earn rewards. We'll think about ways to do that in the future. Well, I don't even know if you need a non-flight zone, honestly. I think you need to go back to the idea of world objectives that you actually have to be on the ground in order to capture, and to be a... Maybe there could be no-fly zones around those. I don't think you have to have no-fly zones all over the goddamn place. Here's the problem. It's like, oh, on the Isle of Qualdanas, or whatever. No, don't segregate world PvP. It's not world PvP if you segregate it. That's the point. You can't do that. It's the reason why Wintergrass wasn't actually world PvP. It was a segregated zone. They didn't have these PvP objectives in Wrath that they did have in TBC, and I don't think the objectives really worked all that well in TBC, but it was better than nothing, for God's sake. I mean, the world PvP died in Wrath, honestly. What was left of it, anyway. I mean, there was a small amount of it in TBC, because they put those objectives in. I don't think they worked all that well, but I think it's probably time to revisit that concept, really. That's the way to do things. But then again, you've got to think about, well, is it worth taking... It's so difficult, isn't it? Think about it. Alright? Either you're stuck with the idea that only people who are leveling through that zone are going to world PvP. Now, the only reason they would do that is because there are sufficient rewards to justify it. But then you've got to have a situation where it can't simply be dominated by max level. Say there's a world PvP objective in Ashenvale. That would make sense, considering the situation there. So, if you have a world PvP objective in Ashenvale that's like, what, level... What? I can't remember what the level zone is, but it's, you know, it's like 20s, 30s-ish, if I remember correctly. So, what happens when a level 85 comes in and Roffle stomps the entire goddamn place? I suppose the problem is that you might not have the numbers to make world PvP viable, but it's certainly worth a bash. I just think maybe the world's too big, isn't it? It's a sad thing to say, but it kind of is. I think maybe world PvP is only going to happen in zones where it's designed around max level, so it probably happen around Oldham and maybe Twilight Highlands, but when you're leveling up, probably not so much. I think a lot of people don't want that, but then again, they're on a PvP server, so if they signed up for a PvP server, then they signed up for PvP activities. It's hard, and I can actually understand why Blizzard hasn't really been able to get it right yet, because it really has so many different elements that make it really hard to implement satisfactorily. If you make it like a world benefit, then you're going to have level 85s coming in there, and level 25s aren't going to be able to do anything other than get completely Roffle stomped. And obviously, attracting level 85s to a level 25 zone is a very bad idea. Anything that brings them back there will result in tons and tons of ganking, which, you know, that's not world PvP. Obviously, you sign up for it when you go onto a PvP server, but you don't want to actively encourage that behavior. You don't want to give people a reason for it. But then if you make it so it just sort of covers the level area, I mean, like an area like Stone Talon, for instance, you can clear it in 3 hours. So, what's the point in having a PvP objective there? People are just going to storm through it. I don't know, maybe it's worth putting them in there anyway. Just for the sake of it. Put some PvP objectives in there, maybe try and encourage something. Put something in there to discourage max level ganking. Put in some higher level ones. Don't put them in every zone. Just some select zones. Maybe put some in Oldham, because that's kind of big enough and varied enough to support it. Maybe put some in Twilight Highlands. And then in some of the longer zones that kind of need to be broken up by that. Desolus, for instance, is so goddamn boring. Why can't we have a world PvP objective in that? And obviously the whole flying mounts thing gets thrown out the window with lower level world PvP. People are still going to come and gank, but then that's kind of the nature of PvP, isn't it? And maybe, just maybe, there should be a reason to not do that. Maybe these, we should bring back the concept of dishonorable kills in those areas, and perhaps it maybe detracts from the objective or whatever. I don't know. But whatever the case, I'm glad that they're at least thinking about it, but I hope they're not thinking about it in the way that it's segregated to zones that you otherwise wouldn't go into. That's dumb. That's not what world PvP actually is. That just becomes Wintergrass 2.0, which some people might like, but it's not world PvP. Okay, options for storage, we don't care about that. This is an interesting one. Were hero classes considered a failed experiment, or are there plans to bring in more? The answer is no. We still like the concept a lot. The story behind the Death Knight was that you are a fallen champion risen by the Lich King, who you eventually turn against. It wouldn't have made sense to start you in a forest killing gnolls or boars. You were supposed to feel like a high-level character already. We also wanted the DK mechanics slightly more complex, so we wanted to make sure only veteran players were exposed to them. In general, we want to add classes to the game very selectively, because the game can only support so many, and there's a lot of new stuff to learn. Even if you don't play the class yourself, you group with them, you fight against them. So introducing the DK was a learning experience for us, to say the least, but we aren't afraid to try it again when the time is right. It's always funny that they call them hero classes, isn't it? Because they're only hero classes in name. I mean, you say, oh, they're a little bit more complex, but are they really? Are they really more complex than, say, a warlock? I don't think so. I don't think a DK is more complex than a warlock. Do you? I don't know. Any DK players out there? Let's have a little bit of an opinion poll in the chat channel right here. Do you play a DK? Do you think that a Death Knight is a more complex class than, say, a warlock, for instance? Do you think that's the case? To the point where it could be called the hero class. Do you believe that? Let me know in the IRC channel. Easy, easy. Not complex at all. Unholy Death Knight is spam 3 buttons and occasionally hit 2 more. I tank. Death Knights are easy to play. Death Knights are hero class in terms of their presentation, not their complexity. Yuku makes a very good point there. Death Knight easy as crap. Easy, easy, easy. Death Knight equals Rep Pally, easy mode. Yeah, I think we've got the idea. Yeah, you're right. Yoki, or whatever the hell his name was, actually made the point, and this is the point I was going to bring up, which is they are a hero class in presentation alone because of the way the story is set up around them. They're a fallen champion, and they don't start fighting gnolls or whatever. Except once they get into the Burning Crusade, they do the same thing. Kill 10 Hellboars! Christ. Therein lies the problem with it, isn't it? That's how stupid it is. Oh, heroic quest. Blah, 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 blah. Kill 10 Hellboars. Kill 10 magic boars. Blah, blah, blah. You know how it goes. Man. Oh, that's such a bad situation. But, yeah, I was so disappointed with the way that hero classes were actually brought in. It's such a dumb way to do it. I said so many things before the launch of TBCs, like, this is how they could do it. They could do this and this and this. And you could have these talent pools, and it could be developed this way, and they never did it. It made me sad. It made me very, very sad. And it made me the cynical man I am today, and I suppose you can thank them for that. Okay. Thoughts on recent PvP balance? Don't care, because I don't know anything about PvP balance, so I can't make any commentary on it. No, we don't care about that. Don't care about that. This is interesting. This is a technical aspect. We might as well discover this one. Gatherable nodes inside a phase area is really disturbing, especially in Twilight Highlands, where nodes often appear on the minimap and vanish upon approach. Could you fix that? Or move all the nodes outside of the phased area? This is from someone in Taiwan, in fact. Yes, it's very frustrating, answers Blizzard. It happens to us all the time when we're playing as well. Ultimately, we want to fix it in a robust way so that when you see a node on the minimap, it's something that you can actually get. We don't want to just have to avoid phased areas when placing herb or mining nodes, because some of the phased areas are quite large, and ultimately we don't want the fact that we thought the questing experience would be enhanced by phasing to spoil the gathering experience down the road. And it is enhanced by phasing. I have to wonder then, I mean, I don't know much about the technical side of things, but it seems to me the easiest way of doing it would be to have every node should exist in every phase. But once you mine it, then it's gone from that phase. But I assume there's something stopping them from doing that. I don't think they'd have done that intentionally. It's something they already realized. So there's not a lot else I can comment on, but it's just an interesting technical aspect. We're not going to look at that one because that's balance related. I don't like discussing balance. I think it's a terrible topic. It's so twisted often. It really, really is. It's like, you don't talk about balance in StarCraft either unless you want to be lynched. Okay, what else do we have? Daily Battle... Yeah, we can go with this one. Daily Battlegrounds only reward 25 conquest points, which is really low considering the fact that Daily Heroics reward 70 valor points. Would you consider adjusting that, as Battlegrounds attract PvP beginners more than arenas do? I think it's fair to say that rated Battlegrounds aren't yet offering rewards commensurate to the logistical and time commitments that they ask, says Blizzard. We really wanted rated Battlegrounds to be attractive to players who loved PvP but weren't a huge fan of arenas. We don't think we're quite there yet, and arenas continue to be very popular just because they take fewer players and can be completed quicker. If you love arenas, great, but we want them to be an alternative. Yeah, rated Battlegrounds, from what I've seen of them, they haven't been as much of a success as I would have hoped, really. Because people will always take the path of least resistance, which is why arenas were always the way in TBC, and it's why raids became more popular than arenas in Wrath, because you could just get the gear easier. People want the shiny purples, and an awful lot of people want the shiny purples, and they're not necessarily always in there for the big experience and the team play and everything like that. They just want the shiny purples as quick as possible. And I think it's bad when people have to pick something suboptimal. If they really enjoy doing rated Battlegrounds, and yet the experience sucks, they don't get the gear that they need, and they would get much more going into something they enjoy less, then therein lies the problem. It's kind of the same problem with the badge system. It's like, well, I don't want to go into 5-mans, but it's the most efficient way of getting badges now, because the old content has just been abandoned. Sucks. It's always nice to have alternatives. It's always nice to try and cater to these people, and I much prefer Battlegrounds to arenas, I really do. I see the skill in arenas, but when it comes to arenas, I prefer to play stuff like Smashcraft or Bloodline Champions. I don't like playing actual arena. Someone made this interesting point, and I love the quote. WoW is one of the only games that I know that has more abilities than you can feasibly bind to usable keys, but still requires no skill to play. And actually, arenas, I think, do require a fairly significant amount of skill to play. And actually, the sheer number of buttons and stuff freaks me out. I don't deal well with it at all. Whereas at something like Bloodline Champions, it's got less abilities, and maybe you could argue that it's easier in that way. It probably is, but I just prefer the experience. I think it's a much smoother experience. It's much more fluid, and it dedicates its time really to timing and strategy, as opposed to, oh my god, can I cope with the fact that I've got 40 different goddamn abilities to use? Yeah, arenas are hard. I said it, and I'll happily admit that. Arenas are hard. Okay, what else do we have? Moonkins? No, we don't care about Moonkins. Nobody cares about Moonkins. This is interesting. This is about homogenization. During the expansions released since vanilla, the specialities of the different classes were watered down more and more. By now, many classes can do almost everything, and almost none are still special. Are there any plans going forward to give classes more charisma, as it were, so that they are more distinguished from each other and regain their special flair? The answer. Sometimes when players say special flair, what they really mean is something so awesome that everyone will have to take me. We really don't want to go back to that model. It just isn't tenable in a game with 10-player raids and 30 different talent trees. We have no problem spreading around buffs and utility that we consider more or less mandatory, such as the battle reses and raid buffs. At the same time, we think that there are enough unique abilities out there to make the various talent trees shine. Shaman have a great interrupt with Wind Shear. Warlocks can get out of danger with Demonic Portal. Seriously? That's the argument you're going to make for taking a Warlock. They might be able to dodge the fire by using Demonic Portal. That's... oh my god. Wow. Okay. That is interesting stuff. I'm fairly sure that Warlocks are not taking to raids because of Demonic frickin' Portal. Oh, well. Disciplined Priests can mitigate a lot of damage with Power Word Barrier, but Unholy Death Knights have their own version in Anti-Magic Zone. We struggle a lot with how much homogenization is good for the game, largely so that you can play with your friends, and how much it's bad for the game, because then your character feels less special. It's something we'll continue to work on. God, I hate the fact that the only reason they think that homogenization is bad is because your character feels less special. That's not the reason! Why do you not see this? The reason is, if you homogenize everything, then people will they will, without a doubt, take the one that does the most DPS or heals the best. Simple as that. Simple as that. It's mathematics, folks. You can't argue with it. Please, Blizzard, learn this. How many years have you been saying this and you haven't figured it out? Ugh. If everybody looked the same, we'd get tired of looking at each other, and we'd also get tired of taking classes that do subpar DPS when this class has got exactly the same utility. But it's okay, guys, it doesn't have Demonic Portal. Jesus. My name's Total Biscuit. You're listening to Blue Please right here on CynicalBrits.com. I'll be right back after this to do the illusion of choice, I think. And we will cap off the show at that point. A little bit of a longer show today, but hey, there you go. This one's called Dead or Rock. Enjoy.